Hello and welcome to beautiful Greenfield Village in Dearborn, Michigan. Now, for those of you who've seen our first video, this is our second little stint in Dearborn, coming to the world-famous History Village here in Dearborn. Now, Greenfield Village is really unique in the United States because it's an establishment that's brought all of the original structures that it's displaying and talking about from their location and rebuilt them brick by brick here in Dearborn. So we have, a whole host of things here. Of course, Henry Ford, the founder of this village, brought a lot of his childhood home and his school and all that to this place, as well as a few of his friends, like Thomas Edison. They brought Menlo Park, most of it at least, brick by brick from New Jersey, and they also brought the Firestone Farm, where Harvey Firestone, one of his good friends, was born and raised. Now, if you're familiar with history at all, these are sort of the three vagabonds, so they're kind of the triumvirate of this village here, which is kind of fun to think about. Now, as well as all those three good friends, their structures, we also have the Wright brothers and various icons from African American history, as well as general structures that would sort of display what life was like from the 1860s and the early 1700s to the early 1900s. So a nice big span of history right there. But yeah, once again, Greenfield Village, founded by Henry Ford in 1929, was intended originally to be a school of all things. But he eventually opened it up to the public, and to this day, we're celebrating our 90th anniversary, by the way. To this day, the village is open to the public, where you can go in and see from around April to late November. Now, I will give a bit of a disclaimer. I do work on Firestone Farm, which is over yonder past the gates there. So, pardon if I have any dirty hands or anything like that, just working with the soil a lot. But yeah, so I do have a special passion for this place, being my sort of workplace for the last 4 years. So we're going to step right in and we're going to take a look around. Let's go. So here we are in Greenfield Village today, a outdoor history museum founded by Henry Ford in 1929. Now we'll have a bit more about that in our other segments, but we're specifically at Mrs. Fisher's Southern Cooking, which is one of 4 restaurants in the museum. Now Mrs. Fisher's is quite unique because it's based on the cookbook of Abby Fisher, the cookbook by the name of, I believe, What Mrs. Fisher Knows About Southern Cooking. So it's one of the oldest American cookbooks, and I'm excited to try some of the food today. So, as you can see, we kind of have a veritable smorgasbord of Southern food here today, classic Southern food. Now we have the country favorite fried okra right here, as you can see. Now this is quite delicious. They do their own batter here, so it's very, very good. We have some biscuits and jam, homemade jam. And then we have my personal favorite, because I have been here before, once again, the fried chicken. And of course we have sweet potato fries to supplement all that. Now all this food, once again, comes from Mrs. Fisher's cookbook, What Mrs. Fisher Knows About Southern Cooking. It was one of America's first cookbooks, so it's a real, step forward in American history there to finally have sort of our own cuisine written down and all that. So let's give some of this food a try and see what's what. All right, I'm going to start with the chicken here. Now it's also served with this little gravy that they got here, which is quite delicious from what I've had before. So let's try it. The chicken is very tender, and the breading, which is sort of like a cornmeal breading there, is wonderful, complements it nicely. And the gravy is very light and flavorful, so that is definitely, once again, a crowd favorite. Now, the okra I've been especially excited to try, because I've actually, never really had fried okra before this time, so hopefully this will be a good experience for me. But they look really, really good. Yep. Very nice batter. The okra itself is firm, so it doesn't lose its structure when you fry it. It's got that tinge of bitterness, which pairs well with the batter that they made. So far, both winners, in my opinion here. Now, from what I've heard from the employees here at the museum, the sweet potato fry is the sort of insider's favorite. So I'm really excited to have some of these. So let's see. Let's give these a whirl. Oh, those are really good. They are, you know, they're not too sweet, which is really nice for a sweet potato fry. You know, you don't want it to, you know, to taste like a dessert. But they're also, you know, nice and crunchy. So just perfect for what you're looking for in a fry. So far, once again, all three winners in my opinion. Mrs. Fisher, you know, my compliments to you wherever you might be. Now, lastly, over here we got, of course, the Biscuit, the classic Biscuit. The Biscuit is an American favorite by far, so I am looking forward to try the Greenfield Village's interpretation. So let's see. Let's break this boy open here. Now, it's served with this jam here. I believe it's raspberry. That's what I want to say. It's got some seeds in it, so you know it's good. And I'm going to do a bit of a dip here, a bit of a dunk, and see how that tastes. The jam is lovely. Now, the biscuits, classic biscuit, you know, nothing wrong with that. But the jam is really the star of the show here. It looks like freshly made here, and it's nice and tart, you know. So, absolutely my favorite thing on the table right now is actually the jam. I'm gonna call that the winner of the day here. But yeah, everything's been great so far, so I can't wait to dig in. Now, Abby Fisher is famous for being the second African-American woman in American history to write a cookbook. She has her place in history for really solidifying what Southern cooking is. So her cookbook is kind of the quintessential Southern cookbook. Now, as I mentioned probably a couple times before, it's titled What Mrs. Fisher Knows About Old Southern Cooking. And she wrote that. It was released to the public, intensely popular at its time, and it's sort of shaped what we know about Southern cooking today. But yes, a former slave going to be a master chef, sort of. So it's a nice journey for her, to be sure.
And at Henryford Village, they follow her recipe?
Yes. These are her recipes. Yep.
Yeah.
This
is found to the T.
Yes, sir. Yeah. These are her recipes. Now, they placed this restaurant in the area because we have the Susquehanna Plantation over to my left. And of course, Susquehanna Plantation, as you can surmise, had a population of slaves. Now, Mrs. Fisher wasn't enslaved there herself, but you know, it's still a nice, you know, piece of African American history. So, we're standing out front of the Susquehanna Plantation right now. As you can see there, it's a sort of miniaturized version of what the plantation in Maryland would have looked like at the time. Now, we have some tobacco growing there and some corn just behind it, which would have been the two main crops of the plantation. But yeah, we have this plantation which was brought to Greenfield Village in the 1980s, I believe. And it's sort of the classic Maryland plantation house. You know, the family there, it was in the Union at the time, Maryland, in southern Maryland, but they still were able to have slaves because of how the whole dynamic of the Civil War worked. Now, the family there, they actually had a son who went to go fight for the Confederacy, so you can imagine, a little bit of tension with that family and that plantation and their government with the United States there. So, you know, a great piece of history that we have here, and you know, it's very easy to forget sometimes these facts about the Civil War. You know, that there were still slaves in the Union, or that plantations existed up until 1865 almost. It's easy to forget these facts, but this place right here and this village as a whole does a great job of reminding us about that sort of thing. So here we are finally in a bit of shade. There's lots of wonderful trees around this village. It's quite a sunny summer day, late summer day, but we finally found some shade. Now, I wanted to describe the area around Mrs. Fisher's here for anybody who's interested in visiting. Now, behind me we have sort of the Porches and Parlors district of Greenfield Village. It has a lot of the famous homes of the people that we have here. You know, so you have Webster's house to my right over there. We have the Giddings family home. My bad. The Giddings family home right over there, and then behind us is a very unique building for the United States because it comes all the way from across the pond. Yeah, from merry old England. We have the Cotswold Cottage, also known as the Rose Cottage from its local area. Cotswold Cottage is probably one of the oldest buildings we have in this village. I believe built in the 1600s out of the local stone from the area. There's also a forge right next to it that went along with the cottage in the same village in the Cotswold district in England. And I've heard that area is quite beautiful as well. So, but it serves tea and classic sort of English tea snacks like, you know, your crumpets, your finger sandwiches, and your scones and that sort of thing that they have over there. They'll do tea from, I believe, around 11 to 4 over there in the summer and late fall. Yeah, it's a wonderful place to visit, very unique to be sure. And then of course, to my left, we have a very, very old building, the Daggett Farmhouse. The Daggett Farmhouse was built before the American Revolution, and we have their original windmill as well as one of our most valuable artifacts actually in the village, which is the Hogshead Barrel, incidentally enough. It's tucked away in the little back of this house right here in the very back. Yeah, the Hogshead Barrel is probably one of our most valuable artifacts, funnily enough. So if you ever want to go see a very old barrel, the last of its kind, go over to Daggett and check that out to be sure.
Hey Ryan, discuss the bidding war for the barrel.
Yeah. Now, of course, us being a large institution and museum, we have a lot of artifacts that a lot of other museums want. One of them, incidentally, was the Hogshead Barrel, which sort of was tossed about between the Smithsonian and Greenfield Village here. Greenfield Village ended up actually taking the barrel and keeping it, but the Smithsonian, from what I hear, is desperately wanting to have this in their collection, but we have not given it to them, so let's hold strong. All right, so we've made our way down to the Hermitage slave quarters. Now, Hermitage slave quarters and Susquehanna Plantation were not the same complex, but they do tell a very similar story. You have one side being, you know, the plantation owners at Susquehanna Plantation, and then you have the other side of the enslaved people living here at Hermitage slave quarters. Now, Hermitage slave quarters are a bit unique because they're preserved, being that they're made of brick and stone. A lot of slave quarters were made of, you know, straw and mud and wood and all that, and they weren't able to stand the test of time. But these were some of the very few that were able to be salvaged and brought here to sort of give us a reminder about our part of our nation's history here and part of the world's history, really. So another nice thing about this village is it really tells two sides of the story there, you know, the plantation, the one side, and the enslaved side being through the Hermitage slave quarters. So be sure to stop by in here and learn about that part of our nation's history if you do end up here. So on my way out of the village today, I had to stop by the man himself, Thomas Alva Edison. Now, Thomas Edison and Henry Ford were really good friends, so Henry Ford decided to have the Menlo Park Laboratory, at least part of it, brought to the village itself. So we have a piece of New Jersey history right here in Michigan. Fun fact, actually, Menlo Park is actually sitting on New Jersey soil. We brought soil from New Jersey and dumped it at Thomas Edison's request. But yeah, so I figured I'd stop by here and tell you a little bit about, you know, what we saw today and all that. We ate at one of 4, actually, main restaurants here at Greenfield Village. There's another cafeteria style towards my right over there, and then a more formal, historically based tavern right next door. And then, of course, there's a classic lunch stand. And there's some other little kiosks around as well, but we're going to be back to do sort of a dessert special in this place where we'll feature the custard stand as well as the many other wonderful desserts in this village. So be sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment with any other suggestions for places that we should visit in our other videos. Well, hope you guys enjoyed the video today. See you later.